The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Seeker After Truth by Idries Shah. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. What They Are Like. A certain king was confused by the growing number and variety of dervishes in his domain. He called his council of ministers and sent them, in deep disguise, among the people of the Sufi philosophy, to study them and to report. His instructions were, find out what these people are like. Disguised as clerics, soldiers, friars, merchants, students, and farmers, the members of the Council of Ministers and a multitude of their agents spent 5 years in their investigations. Each reported separately, in writing, direct to the king. When he opened the letters, he found that every single one contained the words, "You ask what these people are like. I have to report that they are not like anyone or anything else in this world." Samples. People tend to assess unfamiliar things not only in terms of their own experience, but also in terms of parts of their experience which they imagine must be relevant to the case. They do this because they want to gain something, rather than because they want to know something. This, indeed, is the main way in which we can assess these people. Do they want to take, or do they want to know? This is illustrated by the anecdote of the Sufi who was approached by a businessman who wanted to be shown miracles. "I am a commercial man," he said, "and of course if I am to accept something, I have to see a sample first. Why should you not show me one of your miracles?" The Sufi said, "It is not possible accurately to put what we are doing into commercial terms, but we can approximate to your ideas and still show you that you are greedy, not studious. Ours, in your phraseology, is a non-commodity business. This means that you can have references attesting to the usefulness of our service, but samples? No." The Road to Khorasan. There was a time in the Middle East when the descendants of the Prophet were hunted down like wild animals, suspected of treason, captured and killed for no other reason than their ancestry. A story is told of a relative of ours during that time, who was a Sufi of high repute, and a man whose honor was everywhere respected. Unfortunately, of course, he was of such origins as to arouse the hatred and the active opposition of the authorities of the time. He decided that it was not for him to go into hiding, and that it would not be suitable for him to flee, as being contrary to the manners of dervishes. So he presented himself to the court of the Caliph. The Caliph was at first surprised at such a meek surrender, but ultimately he issued a death warrant, which he handed to the captain of the guard, saying, "You Sayyids are a funny lot, but if you seek martyrdom, I am glad to grant it." The Sayyid said, "I have surrendered myself, thus relieving your men of much trouble in searching for me. Will you, in exchange, allow me to present myself personally to the executioner?" The Caliph sent him off, accompanied by a couple of stalwart guards. The party made its way to the huge open caravanserai where the public executioner was sitting with his minions around an enormous bonfire. The Sayyid said to the guards, Now let me approach the executioner myself, for it is not fitting that a man of my rank who has surrendered himself should be treated without dignity at such a moment as this." The guards agreed, and waited until they had seen the Syed present himself to the executioner. Then they withdrew. The executioner, recognizing his captive, said, "So, I have a customer tonight by the order of the Caliph, have I?" The Syed threw his order of execution into the fire without showing it to the other man. Then he shouted, "I have come of my own free will, as you see, unescorted. And I have been to the Caliph, and I have thrown the order into the fire. I may have surrendered, but I refuse to be exiled to Khorasan." "You cannot refuse anything," roared the executioner. "I shall not fail to execute my master's desire." And instead of executing the Syed, he handed him over to the royal stables to be given horses and an escort. By the fastest possible relays of animals and guards, he was conveyed from the land of the Arabs to the furthest borders of Khorasan, modern Afghanistan, where he was abandoned in exile. Service. At the court of the Khan of Pagman, a nobleman asked a humble man, whom he envied because the Khan had honored him, "Is it traditional in your family to serve illustrious rulers, or are you the first of your line to enjoy this distinction?" The man replied, "My ancestors were men of honor. They did not have such lowly aspirations as to desire the companionship of monarchs." The nobleman persisted, "Our Khans are Sharifs, descendants of the Prophet, and Sufis. Do your people not feel honored, as we do, by the mere opportunity to serve the elect?" The humble man said, "Our family have hitherto not had such high aspirations. I am the first of my line to have the temerity to hope to serve such people." As rich as you. One of the 19th century Nawabs of Sardhana was showing his horses to a visitor when the man said, "I wish I was as rich as you." Although he was a foreigner and therefore not aware of the code of the Sayyids, the Nawab, when he left, presented him with presents constituting his entire fortune. Years were to pass before the estate was able to recover from this single act of generosity. Someone said to the Nawab, "Did you have to adopt such a reckless course?" He said, "To be false to my traditions would have been impossible. Someone asked today why we bother ourselves to try to impart Sufi learning to the unworthy. It is because they ask us. Do you not know the story of our illustrious ancestor Ali, the son-in-law of the Prophet? In battle, Ali shattered the sword of an enemy warrior who stood helpless, waiting to be cut down, but at the same time shouting in his fury, 'Give me a sword and I will destroy you.' Ali handed him his own sword, leaving himself without any means of defense. His enemy, when he had recovered from his surprise, asked, 'How can you hand your only sword in the middle of a battle to the man who hates you and is trying to destroy you?' Ali said, 'It is the family tradition that nobody asks one of us for something in vain.' We only know this story today because that same man refused to kill a man like Ali. A word can be one of three things. One of my choicest memories is when I translated into Persian a couplet from Hafiz. It had been quoted in English by a distinguished English judge, whom an associate and I were consulting about something. The judge said, "These lines have always impressed me by their clarity. Put them into Persian again for your friend." The Afghan Sufi who had just arrived in England was quite amazed. "Do you say that this man is a judge?" he asked me. I said that he was, and that he had also taught law. "Ask him if there is any more in these lines than the sentiments which he admires," said the fascinated Sufi. "No, there was no more," said the legist. The Sufi now quoted a tale from Rumi. "A word," said a grammarian to a dervish, "can only be one of three things." The dervish at once started to howl and rend his garments. When he had calmed himself a little, he exclaimed, "And to think that I had always hoped that there might be another thing than those." His Honour, as soon as the story was finished, seemed slightly restless. "What did you say His Excellency was?" "Master of the Royal Afghan Mint in Kabul," I told him. "Oh, I see. One of these complicated customers, what?" Croker. Question. If, as you say, rituals are fossilized exercises, and that literature or practices outlive their usefulness, how do you explain why they are so tenaciously held by so many people? They must fulfill a function which is valuable, surely. Answer. If people want something, it does not mean that the thing is good for them, or even that it is fulfilling a function which is, in fact, useful or irreplaceable. There is a story about this, which has been found to be a very good remedy against trying to get something useful out of something useless, even harmful. There was once a townee who went to a food stall to buy a flap of bread with watercress in it, which was being sold by a countryman. As he put the bread to his mouth, a frog leapt out and squatted on the ground. The townsman, who had never seen a frog before, bent down and picked it up. The frog croaked, "Ga, ga." "Ga or no ga," said the townsman, "you are going back into this bread. I paid good money for you after all." Wealth of satisfactions. Question. What is wrong with the following one, or even several, of the spiritual paths which are so richly available, and which offer such a wealth of satisfactions, as we know by experience of them? Answer. Wealth and riches, the terms you use, constitute a good introduction to the parable which answers this question. There was once a miser who put all his money, as it came in from his shop, into a cavity between the wall of his house and that of his neighbour, coin by coin, through a small hole which he had made for the purpose. The practice even increased his greed, and he craved even richer satisfactions until he not only spent nothing at all, but contrived to visit his neighbour at every mealtime, so that he could eat free of all cost to himself. "I am, after all," he told himself, "repaying him by means of my company, and anyway he likes to be charitable and to feed whomever is in his house when meals are served." He even sold his business and put all the proceeds into the wall, deriving great pleasure from his generous friend's never-ending hospitality. When, after many years, the man next door died, the miser broke into his hoard, to find that the neighbour had robbed it. He had been eating his own money. So ask yourself whether the wealth of satisfactions which you can obtain from a spiritual path, or from another source of stimulus, is in any way of the nature of the misers. The more, the better. Question. Sufi teachers often say that you should not do spiritual exercises on your own. They also say that teachers who make everyone do the same exercise are ignorant, and can even cause harm. Why is this, since doing such exercises is a part of all devotional systems? Answer. In the first place, it is not a part of all devotional systems. It is a part of all systems at the stage where they have deteriorated from correct application of exercises to automatism. Even the teachers do not know this. As to the reason, Sufis don't allow it because it does cause harm, obsession, and imagination instead of enlightenment. But you cannot know this until you have experienced the alternative. You will have to rely upon correct information and listen to a tale about it. There was once a mosquito who decided to kill a proud horse. She said to the horse, "If anyone could kill you, the most powerful beast anywhere, would such an individual be even greater than you?" The horse answered, "Certainly, but of course there is no way of killing me." Then the mosquito stung him, but this was nothing but a pinprick to the horse. The mosquito was ambitious, but could not think what next to do. "I'll go to the hare," she said to herself, "because he is wise, and people say that he knows how to help one attain his desire." The hare, when questioned, said, "Band all your mosquitoes together, act in unison, sting again and again, and you are bound to succeed." So the insect called all her friends, and they listened to the wise words of the hare, and were inspired to attain this desire of overcoming the horse. They set out in an enormous swarm, found the horse, and stung him to death. Naturally, the mosquitoes were delighted at their success. They went back to the hare and told him, and all the other animals surrounding the hare at his daily court were equally impressed, and many enrolled themselves as his disciples. Nobody, of course, thought to ask what had been achieved in reality. Now each of the mosquitoes imagined himself to be a champion. They dispersed in all directions and stung everything in sight. From that day to this, they have never managed to kill anything by means of their stings alone. Now and again, a cloud of mosquitoes kills some animals, and this keeps the legend alive, in some circles, that there is something to be gained by stinging, and that the mosquito is the greatest thing in creation, after the hare, which advised it in the first place. Who is at fault? Question. I have been studying under a certain person, and I am disenchanted with him. His obsessions and those of his followers cause me pain. What should I do? Answer. What you should do depends upon what you are like. There may be nothing which you can do. There is a story of a thief who robbed a man of a number of coins. When he tried to buy something with them, they were found to be counterfeit. As he was being led to the scaffold after conviction for trying to pass false coin, he saw the man whom he had robbed, and called out that he was the cause of his ruin. This has given rise to the proverb, "Do not steal if you do not want to be hanged." You cannot just choose one event in a succession of happenings and claim redress on that basis. Pleasant and unpleasant. Question. Why do Sufis often make people uncomfortable or even hostile by what they say and do? Answer. If you are a surgeon lancing a boil and it hurts, does the patient say, "Why am I being made uncomfortable?" or "What is being done is a means to an end"? Question. But if Sufis are releasing the pus of the mind, why do they so often give pleasure? Answer. If a doctor puts you on a delicious diet, do you then say, "Why have I been prescribed such delicious apricots?" You know that it is because they contain a nutrition or remedy which you need. The pleasant or unpleasant taste, the experience, is incidental. This podcast is copyright 2018, the Idries Shah Foundation.